It's me, Galen. Galen's got Parkinson's. I'm going to talk to you today about why I still use this. As I go through the guide, I will talk to you about really how I've changed things. And I'm doing that for a reason. Somebody's asked me about house rules, what I do different. And I started playing this game literally as it arrived in the UK. So I'd seen the Tomb of the Frog, which wasn't a module. It was in a dungeon story. The first module I've got is G1, which is one of the giant trilogy. I'll show it you, not today, but I'll do G1, and then I've got all sorts of random others. So I've got the giant trilogy, and then the first special, the Tomb of Horrors, and then I've got random other bits. I've got Village of Homlet, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant, Jarl. So I'll have to dig out what I've got, because I've got a lot, and I'll let you have a look. So that's where I started playing. I started with the Tomb of Horrors, and then I started to buy modules that went with it, and very quickly realised that the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook were going to be incredibly useful. So I still use them, but I don't use them as they're written, which is why I've never felt any desire to upgrade. I don't know what the new ones look like. I got this in 1978. It's still played with. It's full of scribbles. It's got coloured in pictures. It's all sorts of things that happen to it. So I'm going to look at creating a character, and the way I do it differently to how Dungeons and Dragons do it. I'm only going to do this video until I've covered maybe enough of a section to warrant it stopping and sinking in. I don't want to go on and on and on and on forever. So I intend, hopefully I'll get through the first characteristic, which is strength. But I do something else before strength that Dungeons and Dragons don't do. So the first thing I do is I let my players choose a race. I made a mistake early on, and I allowed players to choose any race they imagined, thinking I was giving them freedom that they would enjoy. Turns out it's a stupid mistake. People are silly, they make daft choices, they choose to be skeletons and monsters, and it just all went to be crackers. So now they have to choose from lawful good, and I decide what lawful good is. Halflings, dwarves, elves, humans, pretty much. So having decided about your race, because that's something you don't choose, isn't it? In reality, you're born, you are what you are born to be. You might be American, you might be Russian, you might be British, you might be Indian, you might be French. It's an accident of geography where you're born. So I decided that the race you were was a bit similar. If you're born in an elven forest, you're going to be an elf. If you're born in a deep, dark dwarf mine, you're going to be a dwarf. So you can choose that, but having chosen that, everything else you start to dice for. So first thing I dice for is I made a chart, and I went through a list of all the types of backgrounds that people were in my world. If you were going to do this, or if you do it already, it will depend on the type of world. Now, my world's a sort of Tolkien-esque, Anglo-Saxon type society. So the bottom you can be is, I call them slaves. Now, they're not slaves in chains. They're slaves more like in Roman times, or in times of ancient Britain, where you would be owned by somebody, but you do odd jobs, run about the market and so on. And then you get the serfs, who sort of slaves, but they're outside and they've got a bit of land they're assigned to, going up through to yeomen and the middle classes and soldiers, right through to nobility and royalty. That's what your family are. Like, for example, I was born in a mining village to a family of miners. My family have been colliers going way back into the dawns of time. That is my background. But then you throw another dice to tell you what your background is now. Because I now am a retired head teacher. That would put me in a different class. That means your characters are now having to make decisions. So, for example, you throw a dice and it says that your previous class was a slave. Then you throw a dice that says your class this minute is nobility. So you've suddenly now got to think, how's that happened? What's my story? How have I got from a family of slaves to being noble? Or vice versa. My family used to be noble. I'm a slave. How come I'm stood here with this shovel covered in mud? Grr. So you've decided that. The next thing you do is to test for innate magical ability. You don't choose to be a magic user in my world, because lots of people choose to be magic users and it annoys me. So I would say that there's a 1 in 6 chance of a humanoid human character having magical ability. So you throw a d6, if you get a 6, you have innate magical ability. Does not make you a magic user. Similarly, if you want to be an elf or a dwarf magic user in my world, they are very rare. So now you have to throw a 0 on a d10. And if you're an orc or something like that using shamanic magic, you need a 20 on a d20. You've got the magical ability now, but can you hone it? Can you learn? No, you can't. Because what you've got to do then is go to the magical universities and pay 30,000 gold pieces a year, 10,000 gold pieces a term, and you've got to study for 7 years. First 3 years you study everything in your realm of magic. Next 2 years you choose 5 subjects to become expert in. Then you choose 3 subjects to become super expert in. Then you do the equivalent of a degree in 1 subject. And at the end of that, if you want to, and if you can afford it, you can become a doctor and like a master's degree. And if you're a professor, you are a teacher of magic in some persuasion. White wizards are professors. Black wizards have nothing to do with this. They study evil and necromancy and dark, unpleasant things, and they've gone right off the rails. They have to have the magic ability, but they don't go to universities. If you can't go to universities, you can pick up innate magical skills and you can learn certain things. I could become a brown wizard. Because the brown wizards aren't trained at the universities. They're like Radagast. The universities have colours like off the rainbow. So you have red, they do fire. Yellow, they do light. Orange is a mixture of the two, so you would choose red and light spells, which is a sort of, in some ways you might think it's better because you get the best of both worlds, but you can't choose as many fiery blowing up spells as you would if you were a red wizard. Blue's water, and so on. Which means that green would be blue and yellow, so you've got light and water. That's what green wizards do. Violet, indigo, violet are sort of psionic, brain-teasing illusionists. So that's where you're at with magic. Now, let's get to, this is the nub of it now. We're coming to the actual book, strength. In the book, you throw a number of d6, you add them together. We throw 3 d6, you add them together. That's your strength. And then there are massive amounts of things to follow. There's a maximum strength for female characters. Higher strength might handicap your speed. Higher strength gives you more hit points. There's a strength necessary to bend an iron bar to lift a gate. And it's all in here, and it gets more and more complicated. And then at the end, there are items of equipment. How many gold pieces do they cost? But more importantly, what do they weigh? So you've got to look at your weight, and then you've got to work out how that affects all of your characteristics. Then you've got to work out how many points of weight you can carry. And you've got to bear in mind that if you take every possible point of weight you can't pick anything up that you find in the dungeon without throwing something away. Because it's too heavy. If you get a wounded companion, you couldn't carry them without chucking away most of your equipment. Now, I do a slightly different system. I still throw 3d6 for strength. And I take 1 strength away for halflings, so they throw 2 dice, maximum strength of 12. Elves get 3, humans get 3, dwarfs get 4. I say more than 9 is above normal. If you're throwing 3 6s, you get 18. Half of that's 9, that's average. So similarly, later on when I come to intelligence, if you have an intelligence of more than 18, you can read and write. Less than that, you're illiterate, and so on. Once you discover your strength, you can then make a number of decisions. So if I throw 3 dice, here we are, I'll throw 3 dice. This is the strength of my new human character, and I've just thrown 6 and a 5 and a 3. 14. In here, I multiply that by 10. That now in the book there gives me 140 points towards my carrying strength. Then you've got to look at every item: daggers, swords, backpacks, water flasks, rope, so much per meter, iron bar, arrows, boxes of candles, and I find it tedious. You want to be underground, biffing things and finding treasure. You don't want to be doing all these sums. So what I do is I say, okay, I've just got 15 points there. I'm allowed 15 things. Almost like slots. And all right, I might have a big thing, and I might have some little teeny things. But to me, it balances out. If I take a tinderbox, that's a slot. If I take 10 feet of rope, because I do everything in like 10 feet, you might do 10 meters, it depends where in the world you are, but whatever, that would be 1 point. Now, obviously, 10 feet of rope and a tinderbox do not weigh the same, but it sort of averages out. It's a balance. So I allow that, it complements itself, I think. And it's a lot easier for adventurers to say, I've got 15 equipment slots, than I've got 150 points that I've now got to weigh things. And you as Dungeon Master, somebody finds a golden dagger, you have now got to find the right bit at the back of here to read out what that weighs in gold pieces, and then they've got to work out what they've got to drop in order to put it in the slot they've just emptied. So I like my way of doing it. Now I've nearly done 15 minutes, and I think there are several of these initial pieces, as you know, and I don't want them to be boring. So I'm going to stop there now, and I'm just going to leave this section to be about initial generation of characters and race and strength. Okay, so I'll do another one, and the next one will be about something else. That sounds like a plan, doesn't it? Hey, ta-ra, Chuck.